Iran just struck 85 American military targets in the Persian Gulf, and NATO has now entered the picture. This war just changed its entire dimension. This is happening right now. As you watch this video, sirens are sounding across Bahrain and Kuwait. Markets are collapsing, oil prices are surging, and the leaders of the most powerful military alliance in history are gathered in Ankara, Turkey, at a NATO summit, discussing exactly one thing. What happens next in this war? What started as a U.S.-Israeli military operation on February 28th has now pulled in NATO, triggered the reimposition of oil sanctions, and pushed the ceasefire sign just 3 weeks ago to the absolute breaking point. The question is no longer whether the ceasefire will hold. The question is whether we are hours away from all-out war resuming in the Middle East. In this video, we are going to break down exactly what happened in the last 48 hours. Why Iran's decision to strike 85 American targets is a historic escalation. What NATO's involvement actually means for the future of this conflict. And why Trump's words at the Ankara summit may have just buried the peace deal entirely. The facts in the exact order they happened. On July 7, 2026, U.S. Central Command launched a massive wave of strikes against Iran, hitting over 80 targets. U.S. forces struck Iranian air defense systems, command and control networks, coastal radar sites, and anti-ship missile installations. The trigger? Iran had installations. The trigger? Iran had attacked 3 commercial vessels. The Marshall Islands flagged MT Al-Rakayat, the Saudi Arabia-flagged MT Wedyan, and the Liberian-flagged MT Cyprus Prosperity, which were sailing close to the Strait of Hormuz. Iran's response was immediate and massive. Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps said it launched missiles and drones at 85 U.S. military sites across Bahrain and Kuwait in response to the latest wave of U.S. strikes on Iran. 85 targets in one strike. That is not a warning shot. That is a declaration of maximum escalation. Sirens sounded in Bahrain, with the country's interior ministry urging citizens to seek safety in a second warning posted within about 2 hours. Bahrain is not just any country. It is the headquarters of the U.S. Navy's 5th Fleet, one of the most powerful naval forces ever assembled. The fact that Iran is now routinely targeting it tells you everything about how this war has evolved. And then came the economic dimension of this escalation, one that will affect every single person watching this video, no matter where in the world you are. The U.S. reimposed sanctions on Iranian oil after it had initially agreed to lift the sanctions for 60 days as part of the ceasefire agreement. That 60-day window was the entire foundation of the peace deal. It was the economic incentive that was supposed to bring Iran to the negotiating table. By reimposing those sanctions now, in the middle of active military exchanges, Washington has essentially told Tehran, the deal is dead. The U.S. has upped the ante by reimposing sanctions on Iranian oil on top of military strikes, as one analyst at the Atlantic Council put it. And the markets reacted instantly. Oil surged and stocks slid on war fears as investors across the globe began pricing in the real possibility of a full resumption of hostilities. Now let's talk about what truly changes everything in this new phase of the conflict. NATO. Security in the Strait of Hormuz was expected to be discussed by U.S. President Donald Trump and other NATO leaders as they gathered in Ankara, Turkey. Think about what that means. The most powerful military alliance on earth, built to defend Europe against Russian aggression, is now sitting in Turkey discussing how to handle Iran's control over the world's most critical oil choke point. And NATO is not just talking. The UK, France, and Germany resolved to back proportionate military defensive measures against drones and ballistic missiles, signaling the potential for direct involvement. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer said the U.S. could use British bases for defensive strikes on Iran. British bases for strikes on Iran. France and Germany endorsing military defensive measures against Iranian missiles. This is no longer a U.S.-Israel operation against Iran. This is NATO entering the theater of war, and that changes the entire strategic calculation for Tehran. NATO forces struck down Iranian drones and missiles near the Incirlik air base in Turkey. NATO has already fired on Iranian weapons. This is not theoretical. This is already happening. But here is where it gets even more complicated. Not all NATO members are on board. Spain, a NATO member that had already squabbled with U.S. demands during the second Trump administration, refused to allow the United States to use its air bases, leading Trump to threaten to cut trade with the country. NATO is supposed to be a unified alliance. When one member refuses to cooperate and faces trade threats from the U.S. president, that alliance is showing serious cracks at exactly the wrong moment. And then Trump spoke at the Ankara summit, and what he said may have ended the peace process entirely. Trump told reporters at the NATO summit in Ankara that he thinks the memorandum of understanding with Iran is over. While he might allow peace talks to continue for now, he said he believed they were a waste of time. In an angry tirade, he referred to the Iranian leadership as scum, a waste of time. Scum. These are the words of the President of the United States at a NATO summit, about the country he signed a ceasefire with just 3 weeks ago. Brent crude rose 6% to $78 a barrel, while European stocks fell 1.6% following his remarks. Markets reacted in real time to the possibility that one sentence from Donald Trump just killed the last chance for peace. And Iran's strategy throughout all of this is becoming clearer and clearer. Iran's war strategy widened the arena of conflict, thereby extending the conflict beyond mere military might and into the political and economic realms, with the aim of withstanding bombardment until the conflict would become too costly for the United States and Israel to be willing to sustain. Iran is not trying to win this war militarily. It never was. Iran is trying to make this war too expensive for Washington to continue. Every tanker struck in the Strait of Hormuz pushes oil prices higher. Every U.S. base attacked in Bahrain or Kuwait forces America to spend more, defend more, and justify more to its allies. Every stock market crash caused by this escalation builds pressure on Trump domestically. This is a war of economic and political attrition, and Iran has been fighting it with remarkable discipline. Iran likely launched attacks on commercial ships to provoke the U.S. at a sensitive time for both countries, as one retired senior U.S. naval officer told Al Jazeera. Sensitive time meaning right when Trump is at NATO, right when the world's cameras are on Ankara. Iran forced Trump to respond militarily, in public, at a summit designed to show Western unity. And Trump responded by calling the peace deal a waste of time. Tehran got exactly the reaction it wanted. So where does this leave us? The ceasefire signed on June 17th is now hanging by a thread. The oil sanctions that were supposed to be lifted for 60 days have been reimposed after less than 3 weeks. Over 80 American targets have been struck by Iran in a single wave. NATO is now formally involved with the UK, France, and Germany, backing military measures and British bases potentially being used for strikes. And at the center of all this, the Strait of Hormuz, the narrow passage through which roughly 20% of the world's oil flows every single day, remains a battlefield. The danger of crossfire and threats from Iran in particular led to severe disruption of traffic through the Strait of Hormuz, one of the world's most volatile oil choke points, leading to fuel shortages in parts of Asia. The next 48 hours will be decisive. Either diplomacy finds a way back, or the ceasefire collapses completely and the war enters its most dangerous phase yet. One thing is certain. The world you wake up to tomorrow morning will not be the same as the one you woke up to today. You're watching World Frontlines, the channel to understand conflicts, world powers, and global geopolitics. Subscribe so you never miss what's coming next.